Hi there and welcome to this week's edition of Northwest Newsweek. Ontario's chief coroner has called in an outside police service to help investigate the deaths of Tammy Kiash and Josiah Begg. Dr. Dirk Heyer was in Thunder Bay this week meeting with area leaders regarding last year's inquest into the deaths of 7 First Nations students. Heyer confirmed that he asked the York Regional Police to step in and investigate the most recent deaths alongside the Thunder Bay Police Service. Ryan Benazzo has the story.
This is not a review, this is not a reinvestigation.
Ontario Chief Coroner Dr. Dirk Heyer has enlisted the help of the York Regional Police in the deaths of 17-year-old Tammy Kiash and 14-year-old Josiah Begg, both of whom were found in local waterways last month. Heyer declined to say which police force will take the lead, saying it's about collaboration to fully understand what happened to these 2 young people. He also insists the decision isn't an indictment of the job done by the Thunder Bay Police Service.
This is ensuring that we get the best answers to the questions that are around the deaths of these 2 youth, and I've recognized that I believe an outside perspective will assist with giving us a full understanding of the circumstances of these deaths.
Heyer also contends the strained relationship between local police and Thunder Bay's Aboriginal community didn't factor into his thought process.
That's not what's driving this from my perspective. That's where the questions have come forward, as we talked about earlier. There certainly are questions from the communities, and I respect and hear and have listened carefully to those questions, but this was something that I made a decision that I believe is the best approach to be able to ensure that we get the best understanding of the circumstances of these deaths.
But Anishinaabe Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler feels this validates concerns voiced by NAN on behalf of the families about the competency of the Thunder Bay Police investigation. NAN had previously called for the RCMP to take over, and while this isn't exactly what they'd asked for, he says it's welcome news.
There's very little trust right now with the Thunder Bay Police Service, and that's why we made that request on their behalf a couple of weeks ago in Toronto, and we're hoping that through this latest development that we can begin to restore some of that trust with our communities, with our families and the police.
The Anishinaabe Police Service has also committed to help with the investigation in any way possible. Acting Thunder Bay Police Chief Sylvie Hoth declined to speak on camera, but did issue a written statement saying the Thunder Bay Police Service supports this joint effort and will continue to work on behalf of Tammy and Josiah's families and their communities. Ryan Benazzo, TBT News.
8 years after Kenora disbanded its municipal police force and switched to the OPP, the City of Dryden is considering to do the same. After years of debate, Dryden Council has voted to request an OPP costing to potentially replace the Dryden Police Service. The decision came at a special meeting Thursday evening. Adam Riley was there and files this report.
And with that vote, the question of will they, won't they for OPP costing was answered Thursday evening as Dryden City Council passed the motion unanimously. The debate has been raging for years, and councillors have been wanting to move forward and focus on other more pressing issues in the city. Mayor Greg Wilson stresses the decision to request the costing is not an official declaration of the community making the switch to the OPP.
And I know for me, certainly, the biggest concern has been for people to understand, everybody to understand, within the city, within the police force, within the community, that this is just a request for information. It really, in my mind, shouldn't be that hard for council to request to get information.
Wilson says for the past few weeks, members of the public and Dryden Police have been sending delegations to council. The local force has 20 uniformed officers and 5 civilian staff with an annual budget of $3.3 million. During the OPP costing process, a committee will be formed consisting of the CAO, some members of council, a representative from the police board, and the chief of police, acting as a point of contact with the OPP during the process.
We'll be able to have representation that is reflective of the community from the police side and from the community side, from council side.
However, there is some concern from Police Board Chair Judy Green, who's hoping there will be a consultant to do the final analysis when the costing process is complete.
I think it's important as it's a small community, and there will be differing views as this goes forward. But as I said, our role in the as a police services board, is just to support the city as they go forward.
With the vote passed, the city's CAO will now have to contact the province in order to begin the costing process, which could take anywhere from 12 to 18 months before council will then be asked to make a final decision as to whether or not to pursue the OPP or to stay with the municipal force. Adam Riley, TBT News.
A week-long inquest into the death of a woman in OPP custody wrapped up in Kenora last week. On September 23, 2012, Gloria Assen was in the backseat of an OPP SUV. While in transit to the detachment north of the Highway 17 bypass, the vehicle entered the intersection of the highway and Veterans Drive while the traffic light was red and was hit by an eastbound transport. Assen, who was not handcuffed or wearing a seatbelt, died as a result of numerous blunt force injuries. And in Ontario, deaths while in custody are subject to a mandatory inquest. Overseen by Regional Coroner Dr. Michael Wilson, the inquest heard from witnesses and experts who provided jurors with information to come up with a list of 21 recommendations in hopes preventing similar incidents in the future. Recommendations include having the OPP update its training protocols in regard to the usage of seatbelts for prisoners in Grassy Narrows First Nation, of which Assen was a member of, to meet with regional partners and review services available to the homeless in both Kenora and Grassy Narrows. Thunder Bay may be home to a second Aboriginal high school in the not-too-distant future. Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada is providing money to Matawa to conduct a feasibility study regarding a proposed high school and care centre. It's part of the ongoing effort to ease the transition for incoming students from remote communities. Matawa was informed of upcoming federal funding this week just before a high-level meeting of Indigenous leaders and government officials. The parties met to discuss the progress in implementing of the recommendations from last year's inquest into the deaths of 7 First Nation youth in our city. Ryan Benazzo has more.
Coming up on the one-year anniversary of the conclusion of the inquest into the deaths of 7 First Nations youth, Matawa has learned it's one step closer to realizing one of its goals to help protect young Aboriginal students.
We had identified several years ago, just long before the inquest happened, that we wanted to build our own high school here, as well as an accommodation center for our students. And our target was to try to accommodate 100 students.
The students would also live at the school. Earlier this week, Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada agreed to provide more than $200,000 for a feasibility study. The money comes from the $2.6 billion earmarked in the 2016 federal budget for First Nations K-12 education. Ashley Pinescom says Matawa has identified a building, but it will require significant work.
At least it will require $18 million to renovate.
INAC is also providing money to the Anishinaabe Nation to evaluate Dennis Franklin Cromartie and 2 other NAN schools.
Funding has also been provided to NAN Education Council and NEC to conduct school evaluations of Dennis Franklin Cromartie Secondary School and Pelican Falls First Nations Secondary School and Wassa Distance Education Center to assess program quality and identify immediate infrastructure needs.
This coming from Thursday's meeting hosted by NAN for Indigenous leaders, government officials, and others to provide updates on the implementation of 145 recommendations stemming from last year's inquest. Ontario Indigenous Relations Minister David Zimmer says it's key to gather all impacted parties in one room.
I think we have to involve all levels of government, whether it's federal, provincial, or the municipal, and work together with the First Nations to create an environment so the child can get a good, safe education.
We need to put aside whatever it is that our mandates and things that prevent us from working together to ensure that we create a forum where every party that's in the room is comfortable enough to do that and to move forward.
Ryan Benazzo, TBT News.
Forestry workers in Thunder Bay and 4 other Canadian cities rallied for a new softwood agreement on Monday. Around 200 Resolute Forest product employees gathered with union leaders to demand the government reach a fair trade agreement with the U.S., and they want it signed as quickly as possible. Molly Fromer has the story.
And negotiate a fair deal for softwood lumber. Is that what we want them to do, sisters and brothers? Yeah!
About 200 workers gathered as they rallied for fair trade at Resolute Forest Products. This was one of 5 rallies held in different cities across the country. Unifor says they want to encourage the federal government to reach a negotiated softwood deal with the U.S. before another job is lost. The executive assistant to the national president of Unifor, Scott Doherty, says they're looking for some specifics in any deal.
There's always going to be an issue for softwood going into the United States. They only use about 2/3 of, are only able to produce about 2/3 of their production. So we just want a fair deal that allows us to equal access without tariffs, which are unduly put on based on the fact that they think that the management systems that we have in forestry are illegal, which has been proven to be totally false every time we've been in front of the international trade. And so we want a deal that just acknowledges the fact that our practices are fair.
It's a very strong economic force in our region, and we're now seeing second and third generation family members going into this industry, and it provides a very stable resource for those families.
What do we want? Fair deal softwood. And when do we want it? Now. So I'm gonna turn.
Forestry provides over 200,000 direct jobs in 650 communities across Canada. Those who participated in today's rally say a fair new softwood lumber deal must be signed as soon as possible to ensure those jobs are not placed in jeopardy.
Well, there's more duties coming later this month for anti-dumping duties, and that's going to hurt more. So the duties are anywhere from 12 to 20%. We're projecting probably as much as 37% they could go up with the anti-dumping duties, and this could hurt 20,000 jobs.
It affects us. The sawmill industry is really a partner with us. We get a lot of fiber supplied by them with the byproducts as well as the hog fuel. So they're our union brothers. We want them to continue to run.
With 1,200 jobs lost in Quebec already, union leaders and members are worried if they do not come to an agreement that this region will suffer job losses as well. Molly Frommer, DPT News.
The agency in charge of finding a place to store Canada's used nuclear fuel has taken White River off its list of potential host communities. The agency is looking to build a storage repository deep underground somewhere in the Canadian Shield. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization had made several site visits to White River over the past few years. But now the NWMO has announced it's narrowing its focus to fewer communities, and White River will no longer be considered a potential host. The nearby towns of Hornepayne and Manitouage will continue to be considered, and more geological studies are planned for those areas. The studies also continue in Ignace, Blind River, Elliott Lake, and 2 areas near Lake Huron. The NWMO wants to eventually narrow the search to one preferred site that is safe and socially acceptable. Well, coming up after the break, celebrations for National Aboriginal Day take over Thunder Bay's Marina Park. Well, Wednesday was the official first day of summer, and the backdrop couldn't have been more perfect for National Aboriginal Day at the waterfront in Thunder Bay. The celebration of Indigenous culture and traditions drew a big crowd to Prince Arthur's Landing, and Luisa Alvarez was there for the grand entry and files this report.
Hundreds of people flocked to Marina Park to take part in National Aboriginal Day. Declared in 1996 by the former Governor-General of Canada, it's a day for all Canadians to celebrate the unique heritage, diverse cultures, and outstanding contributions of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples.
Everyone needs to bring awareness, I guess, to the Aboriginal culture, because it is a very beautiful culture, and I just believe more people should take action into it.
But beyond that, it's to recognize the challenges they still face on the road to reconciliation. Chief of Fort William First Nation Peter Collins says this day is an opportunity to unite all of the different cultures within our community.
We cannot continue to be separated from where we are as human beings, let's put it that way. We have to work and understand each other and understand each other's culture and our language and our traditions and work together to resolve our, the animosities or the issues that we have.
For generations, National Aboriginal Day was celebrated on or near June 21st to coincide with the summer solstice. But as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced, as of next year, the day will be referred to as National Indigenous Peoples Day. Last year, the Ontario Ministry of Aboriginal Affairs was also renamed to the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation.
Words have meanings and words have consequences. We specifically chose Indigenous relations because we want to put a huge emphasis on relationship building a better relationship, and on the word reconciliation, because we do need reconciliation between Indigenous peoples and others.
This year also marked the first year that the Two-Spirited or Pride flag was celebrated. The hope is for National Aboriginal Day to not only unite cultures, but be accepting of everyone. Luisa Alvarez, TBT News.
It's been 10 years since Nipigon's economy drastically changed after the loss of its mill. But the municipality is on the rebound through the tourism sector, and plans continue for revitalizing the community. One of the key elements of the plan is through the development of the marina and waterfront, with the addition of services like water and electricity for campers. They're also promoting the Paddle to the Sea Park, which acts as an interactive storybook. Mayor Richard Harvey says it's a process that's been in the works for some time, and he believes it will have a huge impact on the community.
Of course, probably one of the most beautiful marinas and waterfronts on Lake Superior. It's just a beautiful area. A lot of it is, very, very underdeveloped at this point. We're just slowly continuing more and more to put things together. So there's a lot of investment we've been putting into our waterfront, putting into our downtown area.
Harvey stresses they need to find a way to get tourists off the Trans-Canada Highway and need to venture down into the town and the marina. And like many communities along the North Shore, Red Rock is embracing the tourism market. However, the community is facing a problem as summer festivities begin. There's no restaurant in the community. The Red Rock Interpretive Center has the facilities for a restaurant, but nobody to operate it, which could leave attendees for Canada Day celebrations, the Live from the Rock Festival, or visitors to the town limited in their dining options. Mayor Gary Nelson says they're continuing their search for an operator, but believes people will make the trip to the community.
Even if we didn't have our restaurant open, I'm sure we'd get a lot of people here just to see the Interpretive Center, because it is a beautiful place. We have a lot of nice things in there. Films on prisoner of war camp, and like you say, the submarine. It's something that people really look up to in Red Rock. It's like you'll see a lot of people down here.
Nelson says the Interpretive Center, coupled with the waterfront, brings in visitors from all around the country and beyond. Coming up next, a kindergarten student in Emo makes a discovery 102 years in the making. A random discovery by a kindergarten student at a school in Emo has resulted in a complete change in the learning experience for students. A rare, century-old penny has been the talk of the school and has had the students there digging up the schoolyard looking for more buried treasure. Adam Riley has the story.
It's not that often that one student gets to make a change to the lesson plan, but that is the case for the kindergarten class at Donald Young School in Emo. In early May, while digging a hole in the schoolyard, Paige Burney made a discovery 102 years in the making. This 1915 King George V penny.
I thought it was just a rock.
And who told you that it was more than just a rock?
The teacher.
Paige's mother, Sharon Burney, says this isn't the first time her daughter has dug up something and brought it home.
She loves to garden. I know that my girl loves to garden, and she always comes home with tons of rocks in her backpack and in her pockets. And yeah, it feels like she's carrying at least 20 pounds in that backpack every night that she comes home.
The penny is larger than its now discontinued descendant, and its unearthing piqued the interest of the entire class. So much so that it made their teacher, Kimberly Boland, drop her previous lesson plan and focus on subjects related to the discovery.
We were taking a look at signs of spring, going on nature walks along the creek bank, investigating plants, and then Paige made this super cool discovery at recess, and it took us in a whole different direction. And right now, the classrooms in the Rainy River District School Board are really adopting this approach of inquiry-based learning, where we follow the students' lead, what they're interested in, and so it's a real authentic learning experience.
Right now, students in the class are learning about Canadian currency, magnetism, and mapping. Even when the in-class sessions end, the exploration continues. At recess, students have turned the area behind the school where the coin was found into a makeshift archaeology dig site.
Well, they were having so much fun digging. Mrs. Armstrong and I decided to bring in a metal detector. And so from there, they were curious about why the metal detector was ringing.
Boland says she has no idea when this lesson plan will end. And for those wondering what the value of a mint condition uncirculated 1915 King George V penny is, it will cost you a pretty penny at $770, but Paige is content to keep the treasure all to herself. Adam Riley, TBT News.
It is expected to be a busy summer in Sioux Lookout as several large-scale infrastructure projects are in various states of completion. In the past 18 months, $30 million in funding and grants have been put into the community for several infrastructure-based projects, including water and several work along the main thoroughfare into the community. While it has slowed down access downtown Sioux Lookout, according to CAO Ann Mitchell, this move will allow the community to receive more bang for their buck.
We're trying to be very frugal with our dollars. As you know, everybody's in the same situation. We have aging infrastructure as every other community does, but what we're doing is pipes up. So all the infrastructure in the ground, water, sewer pipes, and then pavement, and we're also adding bike lanes. So there'll be the continuation to bike lanes, and that'll be a part of the gateway corridor coming in and out.
Mitchell says Sioux Lookout is a service provider for many First Nation communities in the far north, which has warranted another major infrastructure project, a $17 million terminal expansion and upgrades at the Sioux Lookout Airport. She hopes that this, in turn, will encourage more airlines to invest in the airport. And that'll do it for this week's edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thank you all for being with us, and we'll see you next time.